In a forgotten, grim corner of the city, a gang of racist men, emboldened by their numbers and hate, close in on a lone black woman in a wheelchair. They see her as weak, vulnerable, isolated, an easy target for their twisted agenda. But they couldn't be more wrong. Beneath her outward appearance lies a force so deadly, it could undo everything they've worked for. She is no ordinary woman. She is a former Special Forces operative, a master of strategy and combat. When they realize their mistake, it will be too late for them. The operation they've spent years building will crumble. Their leaders will be exposed. And the fear they've instilled in the community will be replaced by a new force, one of courage, resilience, and justice. This is not just the story of one woman's survival. It's the story of how justice can be fought for, even by the most unexpected people. Before we dive into this heart-pounding story, let me know where you're watching from, and if you haven't yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a thrilling tale. Trust me, this one's going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The night was heavy with silence. In this part of the city, the hum of traffic and the distant clamor of life seemed like things of another world. The streetlights above flickered erratically, casting long, crooked shadows that seemed to take on lives of their own. The air felt pregnant with tension, as though it was waiting for something to break. Tamara Price was no stranger to that feeling. She rolled down the empty sidewalk in her customized titanium wheelchair, her gloved hands steady on the rims, her mind scanning the surroundings for any signs of danger. Her every sense was tuned to high alert. Her years in the Special Forces had trained her to recognize the stillness before a storm, and tonight, this stillness was far too thick to be comfortable. Her wheelchair's smooth wheels hummed as they passed over the cracked, uneven pavement, the sound oddly out of place in the oppressive quiet. She shifted her weight slightly, adjusting the strap of her bag, feeling the weight of the tactical gear and weapons hidden inside. Something's wrong, she thought. She'd grown used to the sense of unease that settled in her chest, a feeling she couldn't shake, no matter how many times she tried. The city had always been unpredictable, but tonight felt different. It was as if the shadows themselves had come alive. Tamara's eyes scanned the horizon, then narrowed as she saw him, one man, emerging from behind a parked van. He wasn't trying to hide. The way he moved, with slow, deliberate steps, told her he wanted her to notice him. The man's tall, broad frame blocked the meager streetlight, casting a dark shadow over her path. His shaved head gleamed in the dim light, and the hard set of his jaw gave off an air of quiet arrogance. Well, the man said with a cruel smirk, his voice thick with mockery. What do we have here? A little midnight stroll? Tamara's heart rate stayed steady as she observed him, unfazed. Her hands tightened slightly around the rims of her wheelchair, her body relaxed but ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. She didn't respond, just stared straight ahead, eyes calculating. The man's smile faltered as he took in her presence, clearly expecting her to back down. But she stood her ground. His eyes scanned her, taking in the wheelchair, the apparent vulnerability of her posture, and the faint gleam of defiance in her eyes. He misread it. You lost, sweetheart, another voice called from behind her, mocking. Tamara could sense them now. There were more of them, closing in like a pack of wolves. The leader was just the beginning. She didn't flinch, didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her fear. Her mind was already working, calculating their next moves. The other three men emerged from the shadows, circling her in a practiced formation. They were deliberate, positioning themselves to trap her in a corner of the alleyway. They had her surrounded, each step taken to test her resolve, to push her into submission. The lanky one, who had been circling her like a vulture, flashed a grin, his sharp features made even more sinister by the scar running down his cheek. He taunted her, his voice oozing with contempt. Maybe she's just out for a little sightseeing, he sneered. Tamara's lips pressed into a thin line, but she remained silent. She had been in worse situations, far worse, and had made it out alive. This wasn't her first time being targeted by racists. The men were nothing more than typical thugs looking to make a statement. But what they didn't realize was that their idea of intimidation was about to backfire. The stocky man, his arms covered in tattoos that looked hastily done, chuckled darkly. She doesn't see streets like this where she's from, he added, his voice dripping with malice. Tamara's jaw tightened, her mind whirring. She could tell they weren't just ordinary street thugs. There was something about their confidence, something structured. These men were organized, purposeful. The tattoos, the way they stood together, the air of superiority in their posture, all spoke of a group with a cause. They weren't just looking to intimidate her, they were looking to make a statement. The leader stepped forward, eyes narrowing, his presence imposing as he slowly circled her. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue," he mocked. "You're too slow to keep up, hare? Guess that's what happens when you let someone like you out in the wild." Tamara's eyes flicked to him, cold, calculating. She wasn't afraid of his words. He was just a man, and he wasn't the one she had to fear. The tension thickened, the words slashing through the air like a knife. "Maybe she thinks she's too good for us," the lanky man said, his voice rising with anger. "Thinks she's got the right to be here." A thin smile tugged at the corner of Tamara's lips. She wasn't about to let them think they had control. She knew their game. She had been in the trenches before. The first move came when the stocky man lunged forward, attempting to knock her wheelchair backward. He was fast, but Tamara was faster. Her hands remained steady on the rims as she twisted her chair to the side, using his momentum against him. With a quick flick of her wrist, she sent the man crashing into the pavement, his hands scrambling to catch himself. Before he could recover, she was already on the defensive. The lanky one came at her from the side, pulling a knife from his belt and slashing it toward her face. Tamara's reflexes were honed, and she moved without thinking. In one fluid motion, she reached out, grabbed his wrist, and twisted it until the knife fell from his hand. The thug was caught off guard, but his shock quickly turned to rage. "You bitch," he snarled, his face contorted in fury. Tamara's expression didn't change. Her body was tense, every muscle ready to spring. She used the opportunity to slam her elbow into his ribs, sending him stumbling backward. She wasn't going to give him a chance to recover. But the real danger was just beginning. The leader, now realizing that things weren't going as planned, pulled out a gun, aiming it directly at her. His voice was low, menacing. "I'll put you down, cripple or not. You shouldn't have come here." Tamara's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. The gun didn't intimidate her. It was just another tool, one she could neutralize. The tension in the air thickened, and time seemed to stretch. The flickering streetlights overhead cast strange shadows, distorting the figures around her. But none of it mattered. Tamara was in control now. She lunged forward, grabbing the leader's arm and twisting it until the gun slipped from his fingers. The weapon clattered to the ground as she yanked him to the ground with a single, fluid motion. His body hit the pavement with a sickening thud, his breath knocked out of him. Tamara stood over him, her voice calm, but laced with icy resolve. "You had a chance to leave," she said quietly. "Now you're going to regret it." The rest of the gang, seeing their leader subdued, hesitated. Their bravado evaporated in an instant, replaced with fear. The lanky thug made a break for it, running down the alley, his comrades quickly following suit. Tamara watched them disappear into the night, her mind sharp, calculating the next move. Her hands adjusted the grip on her wheelchair's rims, the weight of the situation settling on her shoulders. As the adrenaline faded, she allowed herself one last glance down the empty street. There were no more threats, no more fear. The city was safe, at least for tonight. With a final glance at the retreating shadows, she pushed herself forward, knowing that she had made a difference. One woman. One fight. One victory.